these 8 everyday expressions really mean. They're not just vocabulary, they're clues to a mindset that turns you into a language learning machine. But be careful, most learners misuse them and get stuck. Think you're different? Then don't skip the quiz at the end.
Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty intense, I guess you could say, when it comes to learning English.
Okay.
We're talking about immersing yourself for like 14 hours a day.
Wow.
And this is based on a YouTube video that's gotten a lot of attention by a guy named Artem called How I Study English 14 Hours a Day Like a Monk. Copy me. So obviously 14 hours, I mean, for most people, that's just not
realistic.
Gonna happen.
Yeah.
But what can we take away from that? What are the core ideas that maybe even if we can't do 14 hours, can we get some benefit from?
Absolutely.
His approach.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this is it's not just about the time commitment.
Right.
It's about the mindset, the principles behind it.
Right.
What would lead someone to want to dedicate that much time?
Yeah.
And are there things from that even if you can't hit 14 hours, you could apply to your own learning?
Right, exactly.
And benefit from it.
Yeah, so let's dive into some of the key points here. One of the first things he talks about is motivation.
Okay.
And he makes this point that you can't just expect to feel motivated all the time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we've all been there.
Right.
Where you just don't feel like doing it.
Exactly.
And so what's really interesting is what he suggests you do.
Okay.
In those moments where you're not feeling motivated. He talks about avoiding this temptation to immediately grab your phone.
Yeah.
And get sucked into the endless stream of information and checking your email and social media and all that.
Right, right.
And he sees that as something that actually drains your mental energy.
Before you even get started.
Yeah, before you even get started.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so his solution to that is something he calls creating the space in the morning.
Okay.
Where you're basically just doing nothing.
Okay.
You know, maybe meditating or just staring at a wall.
Just be.
Yeah, just be.
Interesting.
Just to kind of understand, why am I not feeling motivated?
Yeah.
Is it because I'm tired? Is it because of the choices I made when I first woke up?
It makes you more aware of what's going on.
Yeah, instead of just kind of ignoring it and pushing through.
Right, right. That's a good point. Okay, so he also has some pretty strong opinions about how not to learn English.
Oh, yeah.
He's really clear about rejecting traditional methods like textbooks, flashcards.
Interesting.
He even mentions specific tools like Anki and Duolingo.
Wow, okay.
And says he doesn't have any language learning apps on his phone at all. So his argument is that these methods don't actually lead to long-term motivation.
I see.
Or significant improvements in your ability to actually use the language.
So it's that distinction between, you know, maybe getting a streak on an app.
Right, right.
Versus actually being able to communicate.
Right, and I think he's getting at the fluency aspect of it, right?
Totally.
Like, you might be able to memorize a bunch of vocabulary words or grammar rules, but can you actually speak and understand the language naturally?
And I think for a lot of learners, that's the ultimate goal.
Right, right.
It's not just about passing a test.
Exactly.
It's about being able to use the language.
So what does he advocate for instead?
So his main idea is this concept of complete immersion.
Okay.
In English, in every aspect of your life.
Wow.
He believes that this constant exposure and engagement is the key.
To making real progress.
Exactly.
Okay.
And staying motivated, which I think is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying the process, you're not going to stick with it.
Right, right. So it's not just about studying, it's about living the language.
Exactly.
So how does he actually do this? How does he immerse himself?
So he gives a few really practical examples.
Okay.
One simple thing is he sets the language on his phone and computer to English.
Which, I mean, you're on your phone and your computer so much these days.
All the time, yeah.
That's a lot of exposure.
Exactly.
Aggressively.
Right. And what's interesting is he talks about this almost like resentment he feels. If he sees something in his native language,
Oh, wow.
he almost feels like he's wasting time
Wow.
because he's not using that time to immerse himself in English.
That's dedication.
Yeah, it's a real commitment.
Wow, okay. He also tells this story about researching plants that I thought was really interesting.
Oh, tell me about that.
So he wanted to find out more about a specific plant.
Okay.
And his first thought was to just search for it in his native language.
Right, the easy way.
Right. But then he had this realization.
Yeah.
He's like, wait a minute. If I don't even know the English word for this plant,
Right.
how am I ever going to be able to talk about it with someone in English?
In a real world situation.
In a real world situation, exactly.
That's such a good point.
Right. It really highlights like the practical application
Yeah.
of immersion.
Yeah, and it's not just about passively hearing English.
Right.
It's about actively using it to achieve your goals.
Yes.
To learn vocabulary that's relevant to your interests.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's really making it work for you.
Okay, so why does he believe this immersion approach is so effective?
He makes this contrast between learning grammar rules, kind of in isolation,
Right.
studying them from a textbook,
Mm-hmm.
versus how we actually communicate naturally.
Okay.
And he even compares grammar rules to, like, equations.
Oh, interesting.
They don't really help you when you're trying to speak spontaneously.
Right, so it's not about memorizing a formula. It's
Exa-
about being able to use the language fluidly.
Exactly, because when you're speaking, you're not thinking about,
Right.
subject, verb, agreement.
You're just trying to get your point across.
You're just trying to communicate.
Yeah. And he also emphasizes how important it is to enjoy the process,
Mhm.
right? Like, if you're not having fun, you're not going to stick with it.
Absolutely.
And so for him, that means immersing himself in topics he's genuinely interested in.
Makes sense.
Like those plants, for example.
Yeah, and it makes it more meaningful. Because you're learning about something you actually care about.
Exactly. So it's not just this abstract
Right.
language learning exercise.
Yeah.
It's connected to something that's real for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he's really taken this immersion idea and structured his whole life around it.
Wow.
He talks about his YouTube channel, his business, his studies, what he reads. It's all in English.
That's impressive.
Yeah, he says he hasn't read a book in his native language for years
Wow.
and stopped watching videos in his native language about 2 years ago.
So he's really gone all in on this.
Oh yeah, he's fully committed.
Wow.
And even things like texting, he does that in English too.
So every little
It's a
interaction
little thing, yeah.
becomes an opportunity to practice.
Yeah, and he argues that this is where true motivation comes from.
I see.
When English isn't just something you study for a set amount of time each day,
Right.
but it actually becomes the language you live in.
It becomes part of your identity almost.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the stakes are higher.
Right, you're more invested in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think the question for our listeners is,
Mm.
how can you integrate more English into your daily life in a way that feels natural and sustainable?
Right. And it doesn't have to be as extreme as
Right, you don't have to go all in.
14 hours a day.
Exactly, but what are some small changes you could make?
Yeah. What are some things you could tweak in your routine
Right.
to increase your exposure?
Right, okay, so finally he has this really simple principle for making progress.
Okay.
And it's basically just do more.
Okay. I like that.
Right. He relates it to other areas of life, like in business.
Mm-hmm.
The more you interact with customers, generally, the better your outcomes.
Right. More practice, better results.
Exactly. And so in language learning, it means increasing the amount of time you're actively using and engaging with English.
Makes sense.
And it's interesting because he himself went from studying what he considered studying
Right.
for 5 to 10 hours a day
Yeah.
to about 14 hours of daily immersion.
So he really upped the ante.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And he really believes that this is the key to reaching fluency relatively quickly.
Interesting.
And he's pretty optimistic about the timeline.
Okay.
He thinks with that level of consistent daily immersion, fluency could be achievable within a year, maybe even 6 months.
So a pretty aggressive timeline.
Yeah, it's ambitious.
Yeah.
But it really highlights the potential impact of dedicating that kind of time.
Right. Consistency is key.
Right, yeah.
I think what's important to remember is that fluency means different things to different people.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
So you have to define that for yourself.
Right, what are your goals?
Yeah.
But I think his emphasis on consistent and significant engagement is definitely something to think about.
Yeah, that's a valuable takeaway for sure.
So the core message here is really about making English a central part of your life through this idea of immersion.
Right.
And he believes it's the most effective and motivating path to fluency.
And even if 14 hours a day isn't realistic for you, thinking about how you can increase your exposure to English and make it more integrated into your daily routine,
Right.
that's a great starting point.
Absolutely. And finding ways to enjoy the process.
Yeah, make it fun.
Right, because if it feels like a chore, you're not going to stick with it.
Exactly.
So what's one area of your life where you could make a conscious switch to English right now?
Yeah, what's one thing you could change today?
That's something to think about.
Absolutely.
That's a good place to leave it, I think.
Yeah, food for thought.
Yeah. And thanks for joining me on this deep dive.